First item on the agenda is to approve the meeting minutes of October 10th. What are your wishes?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the minutes. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion passed. Okay, next item is consider approval of the dog park plans and expenditures. Jake?
All right, yeah, so if you look on, I think it's the third page, Paul Baller with the Department of Public Works put this together. As you can read, it's pretty much the first price quote is what we were gonna go for. The construction crew would be tearing out all the down trees that are in that area that we want to turn into the dog park. And that's just a rough estimation on what it's gonna cost for time.
He said he did on the high side because he
On
didn't
the
have
high
to come
s- yeah.
back and ask for more money if it was, so he went a little higher.
Yep. And then Kafka would come with their big mobilized stump grinder and would grind everything, and they take the wood chips off site. So right there you can see it's roughly $34,500 for the city labor and equipment, and then $1,500 for Kafka to come in and chip everything up and remove it. I'm not worried about it not being a large enough site for him not to be able to get his semi trucks through there to haul the wood chips away. Obviously, you can see there would be an additional price if we would have to take it to the east side compost and have Kafka pick everything up there, which I don't see that happening. And then below that, he put on there just to have wood chips on site if we wanted to make wood trails through the woods. Telling you right now, I've done this before in other parks, dog parks especially. They turn into mud pits, and you're just continually putting new wood chips every spring and fall, and people just kind of use it as a person park then. So I would suggest not doing that.
I wish I'd never put mulch down, same thing.
Yeah.
I put like 200 bags of mulch every year.
Yeah, you're just reapplying it ends up deteriorating, and it just kind of turns into mud. Not saying we can't do the trails through, but I think we just make them natural as possible and go from there. And then with the ditch filling in, Paul put in there, the ditch that runs through the park, it would be clean packing dirt, which would be hauled away from the city pit, leveled and compacted. And then obviously the black dirt would be on top of that to grow grass. Estimation about just under $16,000. There are piles too on site that Paul thinks that they could use to fill that ditch in as well.
And there might be a few other piles stashed elsewhere that they
Yep.
might be able to clean up closer.
Guesstimation on time, it's hard to say with the weather, but he's guesstimating, I think he said about 3 weeks of time. The next page would be the city paying for the fence. I did talk to American Fencing Company if they wanted to donate any time or material. They were able to donate, they said $500 towards it, so it's better than nothing, so it's nice of them to do that. The parking lot material roughly is going to cost about $1,500 for, we would be doing just over 10,000 square foot for the parking lot, which can easily fit 40 cars in there. I think that's an adequate amount of space for a dog park. There's also street parking there too, so if it does get full. I am working with Mid-State Technical College, Mike Johnson, he's the head of the engineering department, to see if their students would want to come in, and they do all the laser pointing, kind of like a school project. So I'm working with them to do that with the parking lot. So I'm hoping they're on board with doing that. Running the telephone pole with electricity out, Water and Light would be doing that for $3,500. And then Water and Light would also be doing the water spigot and running water from the hydrant from the street, $3,200. So right there with Water and Light, just over about $6,500 for time and material. Does anyone have any questions? That's a lot of information. I know it's kind of hard to picture what this is actually going to look like, and I know it's a lot of money, but I think it's going to be a fun project, and I think in the end of it, it's going to be very beneficial to the city to have.
Two questions that I asked Jake before everybody was here. If we're gonna vote on this, hopefully everything's here. Shouldn't be piecemeal. You know what I mean? You shouldn't come later on and say, well, now we need money for this.
Right.
It's one project, in my mind. The other thing, I'm not sure I understand the city labor part and equipment. I mean, those are kind of sunk costs. If they don't work here, they're gonna do it somewhere else in this.
Correct. So
So is it really cash or is it just an allocation?
well, it would be cash because it's coming out of park outlay, but it's forced labor, so they are paid from some account. So if they're not paid from this outlay account doing this project, they'll get paid from a different account, depending on what the project is, depending on which cost accounting that they're using.
Yeah, I'm not sure I totally understand that.
It's like when they work at Centralia Center, there's a Centralia outlay account that they charge their time to. So it depends on what type of work they're doing is where the time is charged. So then they can capture the actual cost.
I get that,
Yeah.
but it's not like we're going to get some money to cover that, cause they're gonna spend it somewhere.
Correct.
Within the city proper.
Correct. But it's being that it's doing work for the park and rec department, it'd be coming out of that park outlay account.
You know, we had talked about room tax, right?
Which is that
Which
room
is
tax
it.
account.
Oh, it is?
It is,
Yeah.
yep.
Okay.
Yep. So
Yeah.
roughly, I think we get every year, give or take probably a couple thousand, we get like $70,000 from the room tax into the park outlay
And there's-
Each year.
each year.
And there's
like
280 now,
250
yeah,
Yep.
somewhere around there,
Yeah.
yeah. So it hasn't been used in quite several years.
And have we talked to anybody else that has a dog park? You know, like Rome's got a great one, and, I mean, have we done any due diligence there?
So I'd say Don is quite a dog park user, and Jake has run dog parks before.
And then we talked to that lady, Donna, from Port Edwards, remember last
Yeah.
Thursday?
Yeah.
I know they didn't use any taxpayers' money, but their dog, I have no idea what the size of their dog park, but I think it's pretty small compared to something like we're gonna
They're
do
doing it at
down
Ripple
here.
Creek.
Yep.
What'd you say, Jim?
They're doing it at Ripple Creek
Ripple-
down in
oh.
Port Edwards.
And they did,
It's a park.
fundraisers, I think they sold brats and whatnot to, I have no idea how much money they fundraised for, but, have you ever been there? So I have no idea the
I mean,
size.
basically, this is a piece of land with a fence around it.
Pretty much.
Pretty much. Yep.
And that's okay.
Yeah. That's what
You said
need.
you had talked to Grand Rapids too
Yep,
last
and
time.
I talked to Tom today, and so I haven't heard back from them. I do have a call in there to see if they apparently had once talked about wanting to have a dog park too, but that was all the further it had gone, so that, I haven't talked or I haven't heard back from their chairman yet.
So what happens if somebody else wants to kick in?
Then it reduced our share out of our outlay.
Okay.
Another cost that we won't be paying for is, we have 5 extra dog waste stations, sitting at the shop that we haven't used in years, so we'll be putting those in right there, that's $2,700 of savings right there just by reusing those ones.
Those are the ones along the trails?
Yep,
Oh.
yep. I'm talking to Lycon right now about maybe donating. They have a picnic shelter. They just purchased the bank kind of behind,
The old bullseye.
the old Bozai Bank by the mill, and, talking to them about maybe donating that to the dog park, so that something else that we could have in there that wouldn't cost us any money.
Donating what?
It's a picnic shelter.
It's a
Oh.
Shelter, so.
Just an open shelter. isn't
Yep.
it?
I'm working with them on that.
So what are you talking about in terms of all-in costs? I mean, you can see the fence is $67.50, and then all of the work, if that's coming out of the park and rec budget, is another 85,000, give or take, so you're talking about 150, 160 grand?
Yeah.
And I know.
How'd you come up with the 80,000 number?
I just added up everything on that front page.
But we don't
Plus
need
the-
the grind.
Right, there's
Yeah,
stuff
all
on the front
this.
page.
So I got 118.
That's right.
We don't need that 24,000 to grind.
Correct.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't need the 24?
Pulling it out.
Right.
Yeah, we're just gonna,
Yeah,
natural,
that's if they
that's
were-
just gonna be natural pass then.
What did you add up?
I got 118.
So what the deal is, if the grinder takes the chippings, then there's no fee. The only fee for grinding is the 1,500 to mobilize, but if we wanna keep the chips, then that's about 24,000.
So I'd say rough with the water and lights, I forgot that we're looking at 126. So we're thinking, like Paul said, he went on the high side of the city labor and equipment for this project.
Okay. So the only thing we're paying Kafka for is mobilization to get the equipment out there?
Correct.
$1,500, and then city's people are gonna do the
Yep.
rest?
Yep.
Yeah, they
Yep.
come, they grind all of our like brush piles at our compost sites, so when they're in town, they would do all that. But the deal is we basically pay for their mobilization cost, and then they get to keep the chips, and they turn around and have a vendor to sell them to. So it works out a pretty good deal for us.
And all of that's gonna come out of outlay room tax?
Yeah.
We have thought about different ideas for revenue source for this. We could go and charge people. We could have an annual fee to use the dog park. Just throwing numbers out there: $5 for an annual fee for residents, $10 for a non-resident fee. In Milwaukee County, it was like $25 for a season pass to use.
How do you manage
It's
that?
a lot of
But
administration
yeah, I'm just
for nothing.
right.
I think, but-
So just revenue, there are different dog parks that have dog wash stations where people can bring their dog there, pay a fee, and they can wash their dog. We would supply the soap and all that, so there are different things that we could do.
Is
to
there
bring
really
in
much for maintenance costs, is there, ongoing?
for the dog park itself. Probably cutting the grass once, maybe every 2 weeks, empty garbage cans, filling dog waste stations with poop bags. So really low
Maybe
maintenance.
more.
Parking lot, maintenance on the parking lot, plowing. But other than that, they're pretty low maintenance parks.
I suspect there's gonna be, dog owners that will have other ideas
Always.
after the fact, so
Mhm.
And that's where they could fundraise.
hopefully they could
Yeah.
fundraise
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, in
Friends of the park or whatever.
regarding Tom's comment of it being a fence, just a fence around some land, that makes it kind of tough to charge. Like in Dane County, for instance, their dog parks have hills and trees, and it's like $30-40 a year
Right.
to use that. But, and plus it's tax supported, but if you're literally, it'd be pretty hard to ask, and the maintenance might be.
Mhm.
I mean, is there something similar that
There's room to,
we charge for?
there's room to.
I
Hmm.
can't think
Volunteers,
of
no.
offhand.
No, not offhand, I can't think of nothing.
We don't,
Volunteers
we don't
twice.
ask people to pay for the Zoom when they
No,
come.
we don't ask people to pay for disc golf. Skate park is free. Yeah, it was just a thought for if we wanted to go that way of producing revenue, so. And back to what Shane said about, Friends of the Park, you know, they could, I know people are gonna ask for agility courses for these, for the dog park, stuff like that, so, they could do the fundraising for all that.
I agree. Somebody will step forward and wanna do something there, I would think.
I would,
So I guess the main question is trying to, as you say, it's ball went on the high side, but kinda hard to figure that number.
Are you saying not to exceed, like, what'd you come up with?
126.
Like 130,
Correct.
not to exceed 130, or come up with a not to exceed number?
That makes sense to me. I'll make a motion to move forward with dog park plans and expenditures not to exceed $130,000.
130,
Second.
further discussion? All in favor, go ahead.
Just because this wasn't budgeted in a park and rec, it's gonna have to go through that finance and
Yep.
council route, just go that
Pardon?
route, just to let everybody know that it's gotta go through finance committee and then council too, since it wasn't done through the budgetary process. And the reason why is because we're getting numbers together, and so we didn't wanna,
Budget set already?
it gets adopted tomorrow night, so. So that's how it ended up.
I mean,
in
if we'd done
process.
this a month ago, we would've just
Yeah.
gone through the normal process, right?
Yeah.
Shane, I believe it has to go to finance and property anyways to become allocated as part of.
Oh, that's,
the
yeah,
plan.
that's true too.
Also,
To
this
designate.
was the first step and then it has to
Mhm.
go to finance.
You're
and
correct.
property.
So good.
But there's no impact to the city budget.
Not to, no,
Because
correct.
No,
it's the tax
it comes from the
dollars.
outlay.
It's not tax levy. Okay, sorry about that.
No problem. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion passed. Okay, discussion on possible new zoo exhibits.
A little bit. So, yeah, 'cause Chris was along on our trip to the new zoo and adventure park in Green Bay. And I included some of the pictures that we took of their prairie dog exhibit. This was something we had talked about possibly putting at our zoo, so, we have some of the costs from them, but not a whole lot. Really, the only cost I think they could find was the tube that you could come up and look through, which was actually playground equipment. And it's big. I don't know if you can tell how large this exhibit is in the picture, but it's a really, I didn't get the measurements on it, but it's a really good size. They only have 5 prairie dogs living in there, but they wanna get more, so. That's one of the ideas we had for the Teskey money.
And a lot of this we can do, I mean, it's pretty much, it's a mixture of your sand and clay soil, so like, same as material as any type of ball field, so that's the material that we would be using in these displays, and a lot of this we can do ourselves. We might have to hire a glass company to come and do, you can barely see it, but on that top right picture there is, it looks like, I don't know, 6 feet of of glass right there.
Pretty tall.
So a lot of it, I mean, it's just basically you're digging a hole and you're putting up concrete walls.
Deep enough they don't get under it.
Right. Yep.
Okay.
So I've been to a lot of zoos, and prairie dogs are always a very busy exhibit. There's always kids there watching them because they're kind of funny little animals. I think we do have an in on where we could get, they're called pods, where we could get the pods from.
You know where you put it?
Yep. It'd be back in between the fox and the camel pen. They need daylight, sunlight, and that is the most southern eastern part of the zoo that has the most sunlight on it. So we would have to rip out. It's a little bit of a garden right there. That's about it. There's a water source already there. There's sprinklers in there, so we would just turn that over to use them for a water spigot. Only thing with the prairie dogs, we would have to obtain them, so they would be ours. Like all of our other animals, we rent, but we would actually have to own these. They hibernate in the
I was
winter.
gonna say they hibernate.
So.
Right in their exhibit then?
That'd be that'd be a discussion.
I think they could.
Take
Yeah.
home in your garage.
Yep. Yeah.
Bear's house.
Another exhibit we talked about is, obtaining and acquiring, red pandas. They are normally not, you don't see too many in the state. I think there's 2 zoos in the state that have them. We would have to join, it's a membership in AZA to obtain these red pandas. So that's another, and they had them at the new zoo.
They had 4 there.
Yeah.
I should maybe put some pictures of
So
those.
they're, I don't know if you've ever seen a red panda, they're about 14 pounds. Cute. They're from China, Himalayas, so they love snow. So they'd actually fit right into our habitat here in Wisconsin. So we're just kicking ideas because we have like a year and a half to spend a lot of money.
They look like a red fox.
Yeah, they're cute.
And you can do another revenue thing with the red pandas that we could do. You could sell feeding tickets that kids come in there and actually feed the red pandas, and you could charge them for a 15-minute feeding.
So they're like friendly.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Depends on the kid.
Good point. Good point.
Again, they would be something that we would have to purchase and not rent. So.
Gotta see
So
what-
I think we should probably get some costs together of what the 2, like a prairie dog exhibit would cost and a red panda exhibit.
Yep.
How much Teskey money is left?
311.
11?
A lot.
Wow.
So I mean.
You never bought a panda before I take it.
I think you're gonna have trouble doing that in the timeline,
Yeah, with,
unless there's something else that happens, but.
The AZA, they take applications twice a year, March and September, so it would be 2023 where we would have to submit an application for an AZA permit.
Is there an annual fee then to continue to have?
There is a $3,500 application fee, and then depending on our zoo's budget, since our zoo budget, they go off of zoo's budgets, what the annual fee is.
Percentage of it.
Percentage, yeah. Obviously, it's animal zoo and aquariums. Obviously, we don't have an aquarium, so I think ours would be on a low end for an annual fee. They were supposed to email me all that information last Friday. They have not done that yet, but so.
So if we buy 'em, who's gonna take care of them over the winter when this is closed?
Right. Yeah. So
Zoo
we
staff.
Staff. I mean, we do have a zookeeper. That's part of his job on staff. Obviously, the prairie dogs wouldn't be super simple to take care of in the off season. I don't know, does she talk much about for red pandas for
Care.
care or anything?
They seem pretty, like, easier than you'd expect. I mean, we could ask more details if that's something we could definitely find out more, but they don't sound like they're too high maintenance. The only thing she said is in the summer, they have to have air conditioning because they do not like heat. So that was one thing that I remember she had talked about for sure.
So they'd be in an enclosed pen, you're saying?
I think they had an option, like they had a place they could kind of go into, but she said in the summer they get warm, they don't like it, so. They were very active when we were there because it was cold.
So you'd need a building or a
Yeah.
small
Some
Yeah.
building.
sort. Chris might remember,
Enclosure.
if she said more about that. I just remember the air conditioner part.
Yeah, they did have fans out there for them, and then they had a little area that she said that they could, hook up air conditioning when it got hot in the summer.
So this would be open year round then, because if pandas are active in the winter, you'd probably have it open in the winter, or at least that exhibit.
Which then opens the possibilities of
What would be the, I guess, I'm open to, pursuing investigation, I guess, of how the money's there, and we have to do something with it, I
Right.
guess, that, but it would be a big, the zoo has been improved, so could it be another addition to it, to do some things like this? that,
Right. I mean, obviously, I don't think we're gonna come anywhere near spending $311,000 on a
I mean,
prairie
it'd be
dog
that-
exhibit, so I think we can do 2.
Did we ever go back to whatever the document is where it was gifted? And is there somebody to contact to talk about or ask either about extending it, or we couldn't use it for a playground
We
or,
cannot.
whatever the restrictions are? Is there somebody to talk to?
It sounds like once that's set, you can't make changes in any way.
I'm not asking what Sue Shill says,
who to
I'm asking
contact.
who the contact is.
I don't think Sue had any contacts.
I don't know.
I don't-
We can check.
We'll
with
find
her.
out.
I mean, it's
Um,
worth, I think.
Yeah.
I mean,
You'll
it's
ask them.
it'd be January of 2026 that we'd have to have everything complete. So,
Yeah, well,
I mean,
if we have other options, we can have other people do the work to get it in the timeline, if it's allowable, I guess.
I'll ask tomorrow.
I thought we asked her and she said she had no contact on.
It'd be kind of odd unless, maybe that was, an estate gift, but usually whoever the attorney was, or, I mean, there's gotta be somebody to ask.
Right.
And if the answer's no, then fine, but at least we
Right.
tried.
I'll ask tomorrow.
Well, I think it makes sense to put numbers together on these things.
Okay.
Then we know what we're talking about.
Okay.
Might as well do that sooner than later.
Okay.
Yeah, both of those exhibits were very active, and I think they would be nice additions, so. Get some
Agreed.
numbers and see what they come back at.
it's a nice zoo, really nice zoo.
Well, I think it would be kinda cool to have something open in the winter. I mean, as we grow over the years or whatever.
Do we do snow removal over there though?
Just around the building, not on the inside.
So then you're gonna have to do that too for
Yeah.
safety walks and all that stuff.
Yep.
Keep the paths clear around
Yeah.
maybe,
Yep.
or at least to the exhibit.
Yep.
And they could be close to each other? Is there rules about eye contact between red pandas and?
I don't
Probably have to thoroughly research that out.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
They were by the monkeys, if I remember right.
Hate to make the prairie dogs nervous.
Do that. Okay.
Okay, so,
This
moving
looks
on.
like a large exhibit, so I wouldn't think ours would be that large.
I would say ours would probably be maybe the size of this room. Marshall's is very small
Is it
compared to this. Marshall's might be smaller than this room,
Hmm.
so.
Definitely.
How many prairie dogs they got in there?
I bet you they got close to 15.
And
In
this
an
one, they
area
had
that's-
5.
Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
Very social.
They wanted a lot more here, but they're tough to acquire, cause you have to have like the same pod of
Yeah,
them.
they gotta be in the same family,
Yeah.
otherwise.
Well, you can't have warring factions of
No.
prairie dogs.
Exactly, they will do battle, I'm sure.
Apparently they had a tough time during COVID.
Yeah.
Separating. Okay, we're moving on to the kayak rental possibility at Bulls
Yeah,
Creek.
so this company reached out to us about this. I've never heard of them before. I've never even heard of the concept of doing something like this. But if you can think of those bikes that we have around town that you can rent with your phone, your QR phone, that'd be the same concept as this. Sue Shill and I are having a Zoom meeting with this company tomorrow at 11:30 to ask more details about this. To me, right away, what jumped off is the price. It's almost like a contract that you have to sign with them. So since we do have a brand new kayak launch that we'll be finally putting in the water next spring, down at Bulls Creek. So what they have here is, it's a 5-year agreement. It's a one-time activation fee for $16,000, which to me, kinda like, that's a lot of money.
5 times 16?
Nope, just the one time.
Okay.
One time $16,000 for 5 years. Otherwise, they give us an option for a 1 year for $6,000. What this is, it's again, we'll find out a lot more information, but I wanted to kind of ask it because I talked to Patrick about this too, and he said let's talk about it at the meeting before we went any farther and spoke to them on the Zoom meeting. There is a revenue share, so on the 5-year agreement, the city would receive 50% of all rentals during their 5-year term, and then the 1-year term would be 25%. And they do offer different setups. They offer some that you can rent 8 of them at a time, some that you can rent 4. So I think it's the same price, but again, we have a lot of questions to ask. Obviously, obviously people can't kayak the river in December and January, so I think one of the questions that we're gonna ask them is, if we did a 5-year plan, could it get reduced to a certain amount of money, because obviously we won't be using it during the winter months and stuff like that. They did give us a list of other cities that we would be the only city in this state that would offer this. There were a couple other Midwestern states, Ohio, Indiana had a couple, but there were a lot like in Florida, kind of down south.
What does it cost to rent them?
That I do not know. We'll be asking that question tomorrow. I have no idea. I'm sure it's hourly, so you get it for, let's say $20 for an hour.
So when you say there's no other cities,
They
so
had-
there are no other municipalities that do these shared revenue agreements? There's lots of kayak rental places around. the
Right,
state.
but nothing like with
Private
this.
sectors.
Yeah, nothing with this type of setup with you pretty much walk up with your phone, scan your.
Vending
and it-
machine style.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Oh, and
vending
that's
machine.
what that is? Okay,
Yep.
yep.
So again, they reached out to us about this, and I thought it was kind of a cool idea, but until I saw the price, 5-year. You'd have to rent out a lot of kayaks to even break even on something like this. So 5-year does come with like a service agreement. They do all if something breaks, they come on site and they fix everything. And I think they take it away. Another question we'll be asking, if it stays on site throughout the winter, obviously I would hope they come and grab like the lake vest and kayaks out of there during the winter months. But again, we'll be asking all these questions tomorrow during our Zoom meeting.
You said you talked to Patrick about it?
Yep. Just because I knew he was in the kayak
Yeah,
business.
what did he tell you?
He's never really heard of anything like this. That's why he kind of wanted to bring it up to the committee to see what their thoughts were on doing something like this. I was hoping he was gonna
Just
be here tonight.
looking at it, I like the concept, but it does seem like a little bit of an eyesore too, if you have that cage sitting
Yeah,
there the
it's-
whole time.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, we do have some local people that do rent kayaks, maybe it would just be better to, have them come once a month or something,
Mhm.
and be there to rent theirs, or support local, I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah, I like the concept, but it just does seem kind of like an eyesore.
It is kind of ugly. I would agree 100% with you.
I was up north at Minocqua, similar, where you rent the e-bikes. And the day we were up there was 4 of us, and there were, I think, 8 available bikes. And 6 of them, we had trouble getting the thing to work.
Oh, really?
And the number you could call, and we asked around, it turns out that these things like break, and it's when out in the middle of nowhere, which is kind of where we are, to get them to come and make sure that the electric withdrawal part, because we never ended up getting them. There weren't enough bikes, and there were bikes there,
They just
but,
didn't work.
but they weren't taking cards, and they say they break all the time.
So yeah, I'll find out more information tomorrow during our meeting, but I thought,
I'd be interested to learn about
Yeah.
the maintenance of it, for
Right.
sure.
Report back.
yep. Like Chris said, I think it's a very cool concept, but be different if we were down south and be open 365 days a year to do something like this, but obviously it's a very seasonal thing, but.
And there's a bunch of tourists crawling around looking to do that.
Right, yep. Yep. So,
Because there is a stand-up paddleboard business on the river there.
is there,
Is she still doing it?
Yep.
Yeah,
Sparks? Or somebody?
Kim Kinsey.
Kim Kinsey.
Yeah, I don't think she's doing it
Oh, really? Okay.
anymore.
So-
Not entirely sure, but
I didn't know that.
I think it might be done.
so I know Patrick had his company out at Lake Zeech.
Yep,
And then he was in Iverson Park too, I think.
Okay,
that's right.
Point
now,
Point.
yeah.
He's done with that, but they
Yeah, he
pulled out
sold
of
that.
Luzicia too.
yeah,
They weren't there this year.
they were.
I don't think so.
Is he
Only
with his
this winter.
full-time job now?
Yeah.
Yeah, he sold that business, but I don't know what they're doing.
Sounds like the same thing. But
Hmm. Yeah, get some more information tomorrow.
Yeah. Like I said, they reached out to, actually, Kyle Kern sent me their information. They reached out to Kyle, and then Kyle sent me everything, so. Yep.
Okay, moving on to audit the bills.
Well, I reviewed the bills and everything looks to be in order. Anybody has questions? Happy to pull the invoice.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion passed. Staff reports.
Yep.
Okay.
Tom and Tom.
Tom and Tom. I'm starting to, well, not starting to, but I've been working on setting up winter activities, looking at doing some more art classes. I know in Marshfield, they do a charcoal drawing class that's really popular, and I looked online at some of the pictures they do. So I'm considering maybe adding that. I have site coordinator now for babysitting classes, which we've had a lot of people asking if we're going to be offering those again. So I just ordered the instructor pack, so the instructor will be trained in the next couple of weeks. And I hope to get those offered maybe around Christmas break starting, we'll see. At the latest, I'd like to start them in January. Basketball and volleyball instruction, I've got 2 instructors that actually want to teach classes for those for kids, so I'll get that set up. The leagues are up and running, basketball, pickleball, and volleyball. I have had to purchase some rec equipment, you've probably seen that in the bills. A lot of the equipment is pretty outdated and worn out, it's not been replaced for probably 20 years or more, so have had to purchase some new things. I need to get the schedule together for ice pond attendance. I've got, I think, 6 people who would like to work there this winter, so trying to spread the hours out so they can all get some time there, and hopefully the ice will work well this winter. We'll see, it's starting to cool off enough that
Start
we
making
should be
ice
able
this
to.
week.
Yeah, it's getting cold now. I'm working on a tax stuffer for our season passes for the aquatic center, and I've got that just about finished, so I wanna get those out, and I'll be starting to email the pass holders from previous years to see if they want to renew their pass for next summer. And then the other thing is the water bottle stickers that we just ordered. Those were requested by a couple people actually over the years. We've had people request them, so we're gonna be selling those probably starting anytime, and maybe at the aquatic center they'll sell a lot. We'll see.
Cool. Sounds like good stuff. Did you have a good response for the pickleball week?
Pickleball has been busy. There's a lot of people signed up for it and very few that don't play each week, so
Okay, good.
they enjoy it. At East.
Yeah, so for the park staff, just continuous preventive maintenance on all the city-owned buildings, winterizing all the bathrooms and irrigation systems in the parks. We just finished up last month, obviously, the new irrigation project at the roundabout. We put in 3 new zones there. Leaf and pine needle pickup in all the city parks and downtown. Then again, just continuing tree maintenance on landscape and trees throughout the city. I couldn't get this in the agenda before last Thursday, but Carico reached out to us and they did give us a price quote on adding the CO2 feeders instead of using the sulfuric acid at the aquatic center. So with the 2 tanks, so they're 750 pound CO2 tanks, it is $3,500 plus the shipping fee for them to bring the tanks in and do an installation. We would have to lease the tanks, $2,400 a year. The cost of CO2 right now is low, so we're looking at 40 cents a pound. So he's thinking each time that they would come and fill the tanks up, it'd be $600. So through the season, it'd be $1,800 plus the lease agreement. So we're looking at $4,200 for the season for using CO2. They use CO2 at Lincoln's pool and then CO2 at Marshfield's pool. So we won't be using sulfuric acid anymore. Just last year, we spent just under $6,800 on sulfuric acid. So right there, besides the cost of the installation of the CO2 tanks, we would be saving just under $3,000 a year by switching over to CO2 instead of using sulfuric acid at the aquatic center. We can put this on the agenda for next month if you guys want to vote on doing something like this. I'll tell you what, the pools they're easier to control chemical wise. It's safer. You're not Travis, our pool operator, every day is lifting 155 drums of sulfuric acid around, and it burns holes in your jeans, and it's not a safe chemical to use. So we would get completely away from using that.
Do you know if you lease tanks too?
I don't.
What was the question?
I wondered if the
Lincoln.
school also leased CO2 tanks. I mean, that just kinda
Oh, it's a
goes
yeah.
against my grain, 'cause
Yeah.
it goes on forever. and
Right.
You could've bought them by the
Stuff
time.
up.
Yep. And it's something I can talk to John from Carico
I
about
don't
it.
think we do lease.
I would doubt it.
I can talk to Ed.
Ed would know.
I would talk to Ed. I'm gonna talk to him tomorrow, so I'll ask Ed. So again, I apologize for not getting this on the agenda, but they just got back to me with the price quote on that. So in the long run, we're still gonna be saving $3,000 a year on chemicals, and the price of sulfuric acid goes up every year. So I think this year we were paying $90 for 55 gallons, and last 2021 I thought we were around 55. So within a year they almost doubled the price.
Yeah.
Well, even if it wasn't a price thing, if you can do it without having sulfuric acid around, it's
Like
better.
a safety issue.
Absolutely.
Yep. There are parts that we took out in the mechanical room that, for whatever reason, the city purchased back when they built the pool that are used for indoor pools only. So they balance your free and total chlorine that we don't have to do. So we're gonna see if we can trade in some of these parts back to Carico and see if we can get some money from that. So I'll get everything together and I'll ask them about if we have to lease the tanks, and we can put this on next month's agenda.
Or maybe if you lease for whatever time period and then you own them.
And you have to own, right?
Yeah.
Lease to own.
So that's all I had.
Any further discussion? the last item, which is adjourn. A motion?
So move.
Second.
Favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.